Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell. You'll get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And when I'm not asking Bruce, hey, how big was Batista's? Well, you know. One of the things I like to do is help people save money. And if you're watching this video right now and you're in a 30-year loan, man, you're overpaying your single biggest bill and you may not even realize it. I want you to do a little experiment for me. Take your calculator out, multiply your monthly house payment by 360 payments. That's how many payments there are in a 30-year loan. That big scary number, that's your total of payments. You're looking at that number? You know you can do better. Keep more of your own money right now and go to savewithconrad.com. Or maybe you've got credit card debt. Man, it's not a matter of if I can save you money with that. Your average interest rate on a credit card is more than 20%. And by the way, all the interest you pay on those credit cards, it's not tax deductible. Whereas the mortgage interest, well, that is tax deductible. So if you owe this debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. Doesn't it make sense to get the cheapest rate possible and the greatest tax deduction possible? Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. Even scores in the 500s can be approved, and it's no cost out of pocket. But maybe best of all, we're licensed in more than 40 states. We can help more families than ever before. But how much can we save you? Find out right now for free with a quick quote from savewithconrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard. Bruce, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm just absolutely, positively fabulous.
Oh, okay.
You know what, man? I met a dog the other day, and I started talking to him, and I was like, "Oh, epicases, such a cases," and we had the damnedest conversation. He loved me. He would not leave me alone.
Tell us about this dog. Where did you find this dog?
He was like in the hallway.
Oh, it's your own dog.
No.
Oh, you were at someone else's house. Okay.
Strange dog, backstage.
Okay.
And he was there. I just said, Chase. We talked for a little while. He said, cases. Yeah, we knew.
All right. Well, I hope that you don't try to talk dog through the rest of the episode, because this is going to be a challenging show as is, because I have a feeling you're not going to enjoy this one very much. Our topic today, Backlash 2006. Yes, this is that particular Backlash where Vince wrestled God, I believe, in the main event. So a lot to unpack here, as I like to say on the show. Let's just jump right into it, man. We're covering this because it's 15 years ago. Went down on April 30th, the Rupp Arena there in Lexington, Kentucky. We had 14,000 fans, and it did 273,000 pay-per-view buys. Overall, the event does $19.9 million in revenue. Listen, it's not exactly a company record, but by God, $19.9 million is a boatload of cash for a single show.
Yeah, that's not bad versus doing some of them $32,000 houses that we thought was good in Texas back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, that is something that, we sort of gloss over, but we take the success for granted sometimes, and we say, oh, well, things were down relative to what, you sort of grew up in the business. This is another stratosphere, right?
It sure is. And it was looking at it's kind of a new normality.
Let's talk about this particular time here in 06. This is a Raw brand pay-per-view back when we still had split brand pay-per-views. We're coming right off of WrestleMania 22, where we saw John Cena retain his title by beating Triple H. We also saw Shawn beat Mr. McMahon and Rob Van Dam win the Money in the Bank ladder match and a lot of other stuff. But one of the big things that Wade Keller is talking about on the heels of WrestleMania is a situation regarding Steve Austin and Hulk Hogan. Wade would write, the two have not been around each other much over the years, and as the two biggest stars in WWE's modern history, all eyes were on how they'd interact at the Hall of Fame. The short answer is, at least publicly, they didn't. There are two schools of thoughts. One is that they have a secret pact to have a match at next year's WrestleMania at Ford Field and want to build up a sense of legitimate heat between the two, and hype kicks in for their first and assuredly only match at WrestleMania 30 or 23. The other school of thought has more credibility to it, which is that the match will never happen because the two just don't like each other. They wouldn't be able to agree on a finish or trust each other in a match. Austin is too vulnerable, and Hogan mistimed, vulnerable to a Hogan mistimed move because of his neck, and money doesn't seem to matter enough to Austin to risk it. Here's the story according to several sources in the know, both close to Austin and Hogan. Hogan badly wants a match against Austin, but Austin has been resistant to the idea for several reasons, including those listed above. Vince McMahon offered Austin a 7-figure guaranteed payday to wrestle Hogan at 23, and Hogan has a deal in place where he automatically gets the highest payoff of anyone at WrestleMania. He'd have to waive that, and McMahon would have to offer Austin an obscene amount of money to get him to agree to do that match. And then Wade finishes all of this by saying Austin turned down the formal offer months ago. So, lot to unpack here. I know you're going to poke holes in a lot of this. Let's just go through it piece by piece. I feel like there was some disappointment that Austin and Hogan didn't happen. I kind of thought it would happen at WrestleMania 18. Of course, what we got wound up being probably even better when Hulk wrestled The Rock. But Austin winds up wrestling Scott Hall, and it just feels less than. Do you remember it ever being seriously discussed that perhaps we could do it at WrestleMania 23?
I think that, it was discussed. It was, a lot of things are discussed, but I don't know that at that time that there was ever this set, okay, we're going to do this here, and we're going to do that there. When we got to wherever it was, and we had the Scott Hall match, it was with Steve and Rock and Hogan. Well, one of those guys, Rock and Steve, needed to face two of the NWO guys. And that's just how it felt at the time.
Well, let's talk about the whole Hogan Austin thing. Was there interest in let's sort of try and just keep it on the table, or did they really not get along?
I don't think that they didn't not get along. I don't think they interacted enough to get along and or not get along.
Do you think that a match could have happened? Like, would there have been enough trust? Would they have argued over the finish? Were they both sort of thinking they should go over? Talk to me about that.
I think eventually the match probably could have happened had everybody stayed healthy. But you got to keep in mind, at that time, Steve was dealing with a lot of health issues. Steve was dealing with a lot of trust issues. So, to say that all that match never would have happened, that's crazy to say, because I think that you just had to get over some of the issues that were basically rearing their head at the time. And that reality in and of itself was something that you had to take into consideration.
What do you make of Vince McMahon offered Austin a 7-figure guaranteed payday to wrestle Hogan at 23?
I find that somebody just wanting to sensationalize a story.
What about this last line here? Hogan has a deal in place where he automatically gets the highest payoff of anyone at WrestleMania. That's not true.
That's people making up stories.
Yeah. Okay, let's jump into it. We mentioned earlier, Rob Van Dam won the Money in the Bank ladder match at WrestleMania, which planted the seeds for him to eventually cash it in at ECW's One Night Stand #2 pay-per-view in June of 2006. And Keller would report the idea for Rob Van Dam to win the Money in the Bank match and use it, set up the ECW main event, was Paul Heyman's idea. Paul Heyman is apparently the guy who's been pushing behind the scenes for this, and Vince McMahon likes the idea, agrees to it, knowing it's going to give the pay-per-view a natural main event that it otherwise didn't have. Do you remember this thinking going into WrestleMania? Well, if we know we're going to do another One Night Stand and really get ECW kicked off, what if we sort of lay the groundwork at WrestleMania and have Rob win the case?
Well, yeah, it only made sense. And it was also a situation of Rob really kind of standing out at the time. So Rob was kind of on that upward swing, and it made sense for it to be Rob, and it made sense for it to be Rob, even with the ECW pay-per-view coming up, even more so.
It's mentioned,
give more cachet to that.
It's mentioned here. It's a matter of time till we find out, will it be John Cena or Triple H being, let my family save your family some cash. You don't need perfect credit. You don't need money out of your pocket, but we will save you money. It's not a matter if, it's a matter of how much. SaveWithConrad.com. Champion at that ECW pay-per-view, but the betting line this week is that it will be Cena. Quote, They're not going to have Hunter win the belt earlier than they'd prefer, just to avoid Cena getting booed at the ECW event. In hindsight, the heat, if you will, for John Cena versus Rob Van Dam in front of a rabid ECW crowd is what made that match so special. I was glad to hear, or at least read, hey, they don't really care about Cena getting booed here. That's kind of the idea, right? Us versus them. You need that.
Yeah, you got your ECW. Look, the ECW audience was a loyal audience that was anti everything else. That same audience would go to a WWE show and maybe cheer John Cena and whatever. But they're a very loyal and boisterous audience.
Let's talk about some other news and notes here. Meltzer would say, or Wade would say rather, we went Wade Keller this week over at the Torch, pwtorch.com. There's no clear timetable on when Shawn Michaels will be drastically cutting back on his schedule. Originally, when he returned full time, it was only supposed to be for a short span, but he enjoyed his return to work so much that he kept accepting more feuds and full-time bookings. Recently, though, he has become disenchanted, said one colleague. What WWE does sometimes is show their hand. Michaels realized that he's just one of their animals being herded around. He may be one of management's or Vince's favorites, but he's still just seen as one of the boys. More specifically, it's written here, Shawn was especially upset when he was told he couldn't fly on Air McMahon, the private jet, anymore, because it was off limits to all talent except Triple H, who's family. But when they needed him for a last-second booking, and he said he couldn't get a commercial flight to get there in time, McMahon offered the private jet. He realized then that he was given the red carpet treatment when it benefited McMahon, but despite his tenure with the company, the red carpet wouldn't be extended to him otherwise. Is this much ado about nothing, or do you remember Shawn becoming a little disenchanted here?
I think it's a whole lot of much ado about nothing. I've never heard that, and if it was, and I don't think it was a big thing that people were talking about by any stretch of the imagination. But no, I never heard that.
Tuesday afternoon, WWE announced that Randy Orton was suspended for 60 days due to unprofessional conduct. As of press time, unprofessional conduct had been unidentified by WWE. Now, WWE is never going to officially say what was going on here. And I think it's always just been hinted at by Randy saying, hey, I screwed up. But a lot of folks have sort of pegged, hey, this is probably a wellness policy thing. Do you recall what was really going on with Randy here?
I think it's probably more, along the lines of what Randy said. He probably screwed up and, had something that went awry. And guess what? It happens sometimes.
It is remarkable to take a look at Randy in this era and Randy now. It's like two totally different people based on everything we hear and read. Would you agree with that? I
would agree with that. But I would also agree with at the time that Randy was still probably one of the most talented people on the roster.
Yeah. And he was also, this is worth mentioning, very young. At the time, he's the youngest WWE champion ever. And so all of a sudden you're in your early 20s, you're a multimillionaire, you're a big TV star. It's probably going to be, you're going to have a lot of opportunities that maybe you take a little too far occasionally.
I wouldn't know that.
Well, I'm just freestyling. Oh,
what look, fuck?
Bruce, take your pills.
Thank you. You're welcome.
It's been a while since I got to do that.
I thought that when you silenced your phone, everything's silenced, except when it's pill time.
Except when it's pill time.
Damn.
Because you need the pills.
Good. Is it an oldie from that was like a oldie but a goodie?
What, the pill or me yelling, Bruce, take your pills?
I'm saying today about anything really, but go ahead.
I wish everybody could see your hair. Do you remember Doc Brown's hair in Back to the Future? You've got Doc Brown's hair today.
It's a little on the gray side, but.
So let's keep going here. Bruno Sammartino, Ultimate Warrior, and Randy Savage were all listed as candidates for next year's Hall of Fame. All three are on bad terms with the WWE to various degrees, but all three would easily qualify based on the standards that WWE has used. None of the three is likely willing to appear in person for the induction. Well, in Savage's case, Vince McMahon wouldn't welcome him. For undisclosed reasons, McMahon has said over the years that Savage is the one wrestler he never wants to hear brought up again, much less considered for any WWE involvement. That's all directly from the Torch. Do you think if his life wouldn't have been cut short and Randy was still with us today, it feels like Randy and Vince would have mended fences. He did with everybody else, Bruno, Warrior, Brett, everybody, right?
Yeah, I definitely think that Randy would have been there in person. 100%. I don't doubt that for a second.
Joey Styles is doing commentary at the time, and it seems like he's having some trouble adjusting to the WWE style, or at least whatever Vince wants. He did ECW pretty much the entire tenure by himself, but it's a big difference here in WWE. And Wade would write, Jim Ross was backstage at the last 2 editions of Raw. He filmed the Chavo Guerrero interview, of course, but he also worked behind the scenes coaching Styles on headsets. It was apparent in Styles' commentary that Ross was feeding him lines and helping him get in plugs at the right time. Styles had heat on him 2 weeks ago when, right before going to a commercial for the main event, he made an issue of whether Triple H and Edge could get along. He had been specifically told that on the final plug before the main event, the centerpiece should plug the perspective of the babyface. In this case, John Cena being in jeopardy because he would be facing 2 heels. It was considered an inexcusable mistake because he had been coached on what specifically to say and when. Styles is also criticized for writing too many note cards with exact language on them that he wants to say during a match, similar to Mike Tenay's style, including his clever, smart one-liners. When Styles first entered WWE, observers say he was very laid back and nonchalant about wanting the job, but deep down really hoped to get it. And once he got the contract, his cocky persona that he was known for in ECW showed itself more. So let's just tag out right there. Do you remember Jim coming back in and trying to get Joey up to WWE speed, whatever that may be?
Absolutely. Jim was coach for the play-by-play guys. Jim was coach for Michael Cole. Jim was a coach here for Joey Styles to just kind of teach him how to tell stories more. It is a lot different. It's a completely different animal from being in a 1-man booth to a 2-man or a 3-man booth. It's difficult. Every time you add someone else, the difficulty level rises as well. So, it was a learning curve for Joey where he did everything. And I doubt Joey was very produced at all at ECW. So he goes from not being produced all of a sudden being very heavily produced, and it makes a difference.
What do you make of this context that they said that Joey's cocky ECW persona reared its head, where maybe he was more all shucks at first, but now he's got an air about him? Did you see that or hear that?
I got to tell you, you mean backstage or in real life?
It's written here like it was real life, and I don't know him, but I can't imagine that.
I never really experienced Joey being anything but really nice. I found that one. Didn't see that. I found Joey to be very professional and pretty humble.
Let's also mention there's a lot of speculation abound. Here we go. Now, though, he has been humbled, not just from browbeatings by Vince McMahon, but the realization that he has a long way to go and isn't a good announcer yet in a WWE context. Apparently, Ross has said he doesn't want to take Styles' position since he's enjoyed the scale-back schedule, but he is determined to do whatever he can to help Styles, short of being a surrogate announcer feeding him lines forever. Quote, if part of his WWE legacy includes helping to mold Styles into a decent announcer, he'd be proud of that. Ross will be treated like a legendary announcer brought in for the big shows at this point. Now that Styles has relocated to Stamford, Connecticut from Atlanta and signed a 5-year contract, WWE is going to give him a lot of opportunity to earn his keep. Why don't you think the Styles thing worked?
I think it did work for a little while. It's just, again, it was different. And I don't think it was a sustainable difference that, for whatever reason. And really and truly, I think that, had Joey not had other opportunities and different things that had come up that required his time, that Joey would probably still be there today.
Let's talk a little bit about Joey and his spot here. Was there anybody ever even considered, we're about to launch the ECW brand, I guess is what I'm driving to, but he's been sort of the voice of Raw. Was him moving over to ECW and the whole shoot quit thing, you know, cause he does this work shoot thing on Raw and quits WWE, but then he shows up as the ECW announcer, rah. Had he really flourished and they felt like, God damn, this is exactly what we've been looking for. Would that have still happened? Would they have stayed the course and moved him to ECW, or would they have settled in and said, no, I know you did that before, but we need you here on Raw?
I think that for comfort, that the audience of the ECW audience would have not been comfortable with anyone else telling them their stories other than Joey Styles, if you had access to Joey Styles.
Right.
I think the outpouring of feedback would be, we want Joey Styles, because that audience just want what they had for those 3 years that ECW was in existence.
There's kind of a fun, I guess we'll talk about it some other time, but what do you remember of Joey's sort of worked shoot promo? Was it something that, he's allowed to have some freedom with? Is it all heavily scripted? I mean, it came off where it was the talk of the internet there for a few days.
Yeah, because it was scripted and it was all laid out for him.
Great stuff.
Great delivery.
Great delivery.
Yeah.
JR's going to return at Backlash and return as the lead announcer of Raw, replacing Joey.
I just want to help Joey, but he just doesn't have it. I don't know who can replace him, but maybe if I could sit in for the next 7-9 years and help him.
Well, that's what I wanted to get at. Is this almost a Jay Leno, Conan O'Brien situation where, okay, he's here and I'm going to help him, but I'm really going to help him on to Sci-Fi Network, and you go call that ECW bullshit, and I'm taking Raw back.
I think, first of all, that as far as the ECW brand, that the ECW brand needed the voice of Joey Styles on it.
Yeah, I agree.
And second of all, I think that JR would want to be calling Raw until the day he died.
I can't argue that, I guess. All right, let's keep it moving here. Bruce is not very talkative for the third week in a row. Wade Keller says, no, you're just doing Deposition Jones again, like Eric Bischoff did in the early days. I get it. You're stretched thin. You're tired. You're sleepy. You're stressed.
Thank you.
Yeah, I did all three. I can't do two and not say three.
My days working hard on the go, but the hands on the clock keep spinning too slow. I can't wait to go asleep in my bed tonight.
Hey, speaking of that song, have you had a chance to listen to My World with Jeff Jarrett yet?
No, you're not going to listen to your shit.
It's not my shit. It's his shit. You like him?
Yeah, it's your shit.
I don't talk very much. He talks a lot.
Yeah?
Yeah, he talks a lot.
Does he sing though?
I think we're going to save that for a big show.
Yeah, that won't happen.
What? We won't have a big show?
No, he's not a singer.
Well, I'm going to make him a singer.
Oh, you can't make him a singer. You're either a singer like, well, what do you say? I got a brand new. I even forget the words right now.
Wade Keller says, one of the unlikely stories this past year has been the surprising popularity of WWE in Italy. This really jumped out at me. I had no idea that this was like a new market for you guys in this era. Is this when y'all start to look around and say, God damn, maybe we need an Italian character? Because it won't be too long and we start to get one.
Italy was friggin' great, by the way. And that was one of those trips where we went to Italy and there was a choice given. Now imagine this choice. You're given the choice of, you can go to Rome and spend a week in Rome on the company's dime, where they would pay your hotel and your food, and you get to be in Rome. Or you could tour on a bus, your respective brand. If you wrote for SmackDown, you went on the SmackDown tour. If you wrote for Raw, you went on the Raw tour. And you could tour with the boys and everything in a bus in their shows. Guess which one I picked, Conrad?
You hung out in Rome.
I hung out in motherfucking Rome.
Yeah.
And I had a great time. So it was, Italy was absolutely fantastic, man. I loved Rome every single night down at the piazza. Oh, it was just absolutely great. And wrote one of the, if not the best, Brian Gewirtz Raw ever while in Rome. So there.
Let's talk about ECW. Wade would say almost on a whim last week, Vince McMahon initiated a full-time relaunch of Extreme Championship Wrestling as a brand. This comes at the end of April when this is announced. And of course, Wade says the plans change and expand daily, but in short, the idea is to exploit the equity that already exists in the brand beyond the annual June pay-per-views. And so they're also talking about how they're going to be bringing in other talent. They're being offered full-time deals, and those names include Sandman, Sabu, Balls Mahoney, Just Incredible, Lance Storm, Francine, and he says perhaps others. Within the company, there's a lot of other unutilized talent that they think they can tap into on this ECW side of things, including Kid Cash, Super Crazy, Psychosis, Johnny Swinger, Al Snow, and of course, big names like Rob Van Dam, Chris Benoit, and Mick Foley as well. He says the biggest question, which is yet to be finalized, is how the brand will actually be presented after the June show. He says there's no new time slot on USA or any other network that he knows of that has a deal in place. And for it to feel like a true relaunch, you need a separate weekly show. And he also freestyles that CM Punk, Paul London, Brian Kendrick, and Matt Hardy are also a lot of other names that could fit with this ECW brand. What really sticks out to me is almost on a whim is the way this report starts. Was this sort of all of a sudden, do you remember coming to the office and it's like, okay, we're starting ECW. There wasn't like a big discussion or planning, a rampway, a runway. It's just, nope, we're doing it.
Oh yeah. Cause that's just the way you do business in a publicly traded $1 billion company.
Well, I guess my question was, it always feels chicken and the egg when you talk about TV deals. If you're going to launch a new television brand, you need a television clearance. Did Sci-Fi or did someone present an offer and say, hey, we would like to have WWE programming? So we had an opportunity, but what we didn't have was a theme. Does that make sense?
Well, no, Vince was looking to, based on the success of the pay-per-views and looking for something, create more content. Everybody's always looking for more content. The networks, content. So if you create new content, now you have to find a home for it. So the content was there, and looking at it from that vantage point, we could reinvent ECW. Now you need a place for it to go, and then the FX deal came about. But it was kind of out there shopping and didn't take long to shop at all.
Do you think any of this would have happened had it not been for the success of that rise and fall of ECW DVD?
Oh, I know it wouldn't have happened if that hadn't been successful.
I mean, that sort of is step one, and then One Night Stand in 2005. And then you got to start looking around and thinking, shit, maybe there's something here. Right.
Right. And you look at the desire always to have a desire to create your own competition. You're still looking for that as well. And maybe this could be it. Again, create a third brand that is something that might work. Who knows?
Next up, we should mention Brock Lesnar has finally finished his legal battle with WWE. Wade would say neither side is allowed to talk, but both parties have issued statements saying they're satisfied with what appears to be a compromise. The wording from WWE indicates they feel they are substantially protected from Lesnar working for their competition. Lesnar's lawyer said that Lesnar will be able to pursue a living in his field. In other words, Lesnar probably can't wrestle on TV in the U.S. for a certain period of time, but can wrestle overseas and participate in MMA fights. Of course, we know Brock is going to take a dabble over with New Japan Pro Wrestling and try his hand at MMA and do quite well in the UFC. What do you remember about this pissing contest finally coming to an end?
I sometimes you just reach a point of, enough and being done with it, and you move on. And that's pretty much where we were at that point. It was, you protect your IP as much as you can, and you try to protect, that's why you have contracts, and do what you have to do. But then when it's over and you kind of, at some point you just got to move on.
Right.
And from our vantage point, that was something the lawyers were battling with. And that's not anything that we were in a day to day, what's the status there? Because there was never at that point, there wasn't okay, well, he's coming back here. That wasn't what we were looking for. So I really didn't care.
Let's talk about some other news here. Prior to the WWE heading to England for the bulk of the European tour, quote unquote, network guy Palmer Cannon quit the company. While drinking with JBL, Chris Benoit, and Dave Finlay, Cannon grew upset with the ribbing he was the target of, confronted JBL about it, and before a physical confrontation took place, decided to quit. He flew himself home. One WWE source tells The Torch that JBL is automatically being made out to be the bad guy because of his reputation of being a hard ribber. But in this case, this is a situation where Cannon was just overreacting. Quote, I hear Cannon felt entitled, that he had paid his dues instead of sitting there and listening. Cannon lost to Funaki at the April 19th show in Italy before quitting and booking a flight home. Cannon was not used on SmackDown as a wrestler, but actually did train to be a wrestler and was signed by WWE just over a year ago, originally as a wrestler. What can you tell us about Palmer Cannon and how this kind of got off track?
Well, the whole Palmer Cannon thing was this guy looked like a network executive. That's how he got the gig. He was a guy that was in developmental and looked like, I could see him in a boardroom in a network. So that's why he was chosen. He had a look. Coming in, we figured we could teach him what he lacked in the working department inside the ring. And his personality was dry, kind of that of a network executive as well. So he was brought in, was not a good fit. And, JBL gets a lot of heat and gets blamed for a lot of things, maybe just because he's the loudest. But John was not the only one that had issues with Mr. Cannon. And again, it just isn't a fit. It's kind of like in your mortgage company. You may have the greatest, the perfect fit that you think that you want to make work, and they come into that environment, and Larry and others in there, they just don't fit with them. And so you've got to make that decision that, okay, well, they may be the best, but they don't fit with the other 6 loan officers I've got here.
Right.
And they may just go somewhere else. I'll go down to XYZ Mortgage.
Let's talk a little bit about, you make the torch here and it's not favorable. Surprise. Another former WWE talent says Laurinaitis is a good fit with Vince McMahon's inner circle of Bruce Prichard, Gerald Briscoe. Quote, Prichard is the type to be your friend to your face, goad you into saying something negative about Vince and then run to Vince and quote you to get you in trouble and score brownie points with the boss. For what it's worth, Prichard is the executive who caught Randy Orton violating a WWE policy backstage WrestleMania week and promptly reported it to Vince McMahon, which was the final straw in Orton getting suspended.
Well, what say you, Conrad? You've been around me for several years.
No, that is not you. That is not your MO. I can agree with that.
But you've heard that because you've heard that from people that don't know me.
Well, yeah, listen, I think, one of the great things about Something to Wrestle is so much of this stuff was out there for so long, and you never tried to control the narrative. You just said, fuck it. It's a quote unquote dirt sheet. Who gives a shit? And so a lot of fans tuned into this show for the first time thinking, who wants to listen to Prichard? He's a stooge and he's a blah, blah, blah. And then you listen to the show and you're like, he's a fucking entertaining son of a bitch. So here we are enjoying our Something to Wrestle success. But still, when you read about this has to make you feel these motherfuckers.
No, I don't dignify it with an answer because it's ill-informed, people stating shit that from people who aren't there, that watch from the outskirts, that have no idea.
How does the story like the one here about it was Prichard who caught Randy Orton violating a policy, blah, blah, blah. How does that get out?
Same way everything else gets out.
Okay. This is a great show so far.
Telegraph, tell the wrestler.
Kurt Angle's coming off the road right after Backlash. Wade would write, Kurt Angle has been taken off the road so his body has time to recover. Unfortunately, Angle is facing chronic pain for the rest of his career, considering the condition of his damaged neck. For years, Angle has wrestled with a neck that is considered as bad, if not worse, than the condition of Steve Austin's. Austin is concerned about paralysis from one wrong bump, so he retired from active wrestling and is hesitant to even return for a match or two. Yet Angle is so driven to be considered the best of all-time pro wrestlers, and he realizes he hasn't secured that lofty position yet, so he continues to wrestle despite the risks. He reached a point on the European tour where he struggled to lift his suitcase at a hotel and openly admitted his daily pain was debilitating. Angle is known for working through incredible pain and has a reputation for wanting to please everyone, so when he admits to pain, it's considered extremely serious. As a result, WWE pulls Angle from the road after the European tour, and from this point on, he may never wrestle a true full-time year-round schedule again. Although given his drive and ability, for better or worse, to work through pain and injury after a few weeks off, he may try to wrestle again. Otherwise, it seems a best-case scenario that he wrestles for stretches of time and then takes a stretch off. What do you remember about Kurt? He's coming to an end here in WWE. I don't think he's here very many more months before he has that famous meeting in front of the writers or whatever, and he pulls his pants down in front of Vince to show him, hey man, I've torn everything. I'm in bad shape here. But we're not quite there yet. Did you know, hey man, this thing's percolating. We got to do something for Kurt soon.
Yeah, and here's the thing. You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So if Kurt isn't coming in and telling people, and he may tell people privately that he's hurting and that he's in pain, but I can tell you a lot of times in asking Kurt, how you doing? No, man, I'm fine. I'm great. No, I'm a little banged up, or I hurt this. No, but I feel great today. I've been stretching out, and you don't know. And if you go and ask someone, you have to believe that they're telling you the truth. And if they're not telling you the truth, then you can only work on the information that you have.
Right.
And if, you send them to a doctor and then the doctor says they can't wrestle, or they're have this injury, tore something, okay, then you act on that. But, Kurt was one of those. Kurt's a double tough son of a bitch that would rap and go. No, man, I won a gold medal with a broken freaking neck.
Right.
It's not like this is for Kurt's first time to kind of conceal an injury and say, no, I'm fine, man. Let's go. And with a broken neck, could you imagine, had Kurt not had a broken neck, how well Kurt would have done in the Olympics?
Or WWE. Like, how much better could you be?
Right. And he was the best in the world.
Yeah.
So, it's hard to grade on that curve. Okay, you're the best and you're damaged.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's pretty fucking good. So, but the point is I don't think that anybody knew until Kurt finally raised his hand and said, hey, I've got some issues over here.
Let's talk a little bit about the show now. We're finally here. We're about 7 minutes into our conversation so far. Let's talk about Backlash. On Heat prior to the pay-per-view, Goldust beat Rob Conway with a power slam, and Joey Styles and Jerry Lawler called that match. But after the pay-per-view intro, Jim Ross joins Jerry Lawler at the broadcast position without any explanation, which Wade said wasn't surprising. Match number 1, Carlito gets a win over Chris Masters in 9 minutes and 58 seconds. Meltzer would say that Masters worked on Carlito's neck and in the back of his head after Carlito took the early offensive control. Of course, the master lock is what we're trying to tease here. He goes for the master lock eventually, but Carlito slips out and hits the lung blower. He makes a cover, places his feet on the ropes for the win, and he gets it. So there you go. Carlito wins. Meltzer didn't love it though. Called it a dud. There's a misplanned spot about 8.5 minutes in where Carlito's on top of Masters and Masters forgets to kick out, and the referee comes up short on a 2 count that really was 3. And the fans are booing, and JR points out that Masters was asleep at the wheel. When you have a major snafu like this on pay-per-view, this has got to be something that gets under the craw of Vince McMahon.
Yeah, it's not good. And this is one of those where a referee should be, the final call. And if the guys, aren't doing their part, then the referee should count and move on. Make it real. The referee should have authority. And that's kind of where things get upset.
All right. So backstage next, we've got Maria doing a bit of an interview, and Lita is going to interrupt and say, Edge doesn't care what the fans think. And Maria said Lita needs to keep her mouth open. And Lita says she's going to use her mouth to laugh when Edge walks out as WWE champion. And Lita said Edge and herself are going to have a private sex celebration. Boy, this is just some weird stuff here in hindsight, is it not?
Well, again, different times, different places. When you go back and look at 15 years ago, it was, again, a different time and a different place.
So here we are. Let's keep it moving and let's talk about Ric Flair and Umaga. On paper, this seems like, what the fuck? But styles make fights, right? Yes. Umaga has Armando Estrada with him. They only go 3 minutes and 31 seconds. It was a merciful guide for Flair that night. Umaga's going to attack him before the ring bell even happens. He's on his way to the ring. So we're getting a jump start. Flair gets a little bit of offense in early, but eventually Umaga throws him to the outside and into the ring steps. Back in the ring, he squashes him with the Tree of Woe, jabs him in the throat with the tape thumb, and boom, there's your quick win for Umaga. Wade would say poor use of Flair when a serviceable mid-card babyface would have sufficed. Half a star. I don't know. It's an easy night for Rick, right? Who cares?
And it's also a building night for Umaga. And for me, I would have loved to have had a program with Flair and Umaga during this time, because I think that Rick could have, been one of those guys to make Umaga even bigger. God, Eki could go and was one of those really, really impressive talents that you could put in the ring with anybody. And people would go, holy shit, that Umaga is an impressive son of a bitch. So I wish we had done more with Rick and Umaga, frankly.
Yeah. I mean, and here's the thing. It's not like Flair had a problem putting him over. I mean, my goodness, Flair don't care, right?
Flair don't care. Wait, no care, no Flair. Well,
I think the thing you and I enjoyed a few years ago was, I'm 65. I could give a fuck.
I use that now, actually. But okay, not the 65.
Do you do the finger point like he did?
I do the finger point. I do the goddamn it. I'm 58 years old and I don't give a fuck. Yes.
Backstage.
And I try to do it at a bar, usually when somebody's telling me I can't have something.
There you go.
Yeah.
Backstage, we see Vince flexing his muscles before Shane McMahon interrupts. Shane asks if he's ready to take out Shawn Michaels. And Vince reminds him, hey, it's a tag match against Shawn and God. And Vince tells Shane to leave God to him during the match. And Vince grabs Shane's water bottle, spills some on the floor, and then proceeds to walk on water. Vince then reenacts Jesus's multiplication of the bread and the fish. Shane discovered that his water had been turned into wine, and Shane looked at Vince as if he had lost his mind. Boy, howdy. This is, not good, but Vince loved it.
It's entertainment. It is parody. This is entertainment. This is parody, and it's okay for movies and all that to do it, but not do it here.
I don't know. A lot of people think this was in poor taste and sacrilegious, et cetera, et cetera.
Religious people that have lived their entire life under that and that have grown up that way. But I do think that based, in entertainment and parody, that this was entertainment. For those that took it seriously, well, then sorry.
Next up, Trish Stratus is going to beat Mickie James by DQ in 3 minutes and 8 seconds. So Mickie retains the women's title. Trish takes control with a stiff kick to the head and sends Mickie to the outside. Trish is playing mind games, according to Wade Keller, by blowing a kiss here. Eventually, Mickey's going to choke Trish, and the referee DQs Mickie because she fails to release the choke before a 5 count. And Mickie walks out with the belt, and Trish is yelling at her while holding her arm. And Wade thought it was disappointing considering the hype. He gives it 3/4 of a star. It doesn't feel like a pay-per-view match when it ends like this. It feels like another TV segment, right?
Well, it was continuation of the story, and the story had a lot of legs left to it. And I thought that it was, something that fit on the pay-per-view. You can't all have 87 matches, go 300 hours long.
Next up, we go backstage and we see Maria acknowledge that she made a mistake in the first backstage segment where she said, Chris Masters won. Of course, he did not. Carlito won. But then she welcomes Shawn Michaels in, who said he's not about shoving his Christianity down people's throats. He said God is at the pay-per-view just as he always is present. And Shawn said it's time to call the spade a spade and label the match a handicap match. And Shawn says he's going to bring the McMahons to their knees and maybe force Vince to cry out to God. He lets the fans say, suck it, and then he leaves. This is the era where he's still a part of DX and he wants to do the suck it thing, but he's not going to say it. So he'll tease it and sort of point to the audience, and the audience finishes it. Was this a challenging bit for Shawn to get on board with?
I don't know. I think that it was a bit of a sell, but I think that Shawn got it. Shawn got the fact that this was a parody and that, no matter how you get your message out sometimes, I think from Shawn's point of view, that it's a good thing for him to get his message out and for him to talk about the change in his Christianity beliefs. So I think that Shawn looked at it as a positive for him. And also saw that, the other side of it, the parody and the entertainment.
Where did you land on it? I mean, were you trying to sell Shawn on it? Does Vince sell Shawn on it? I'm just wondering how that conversation happens and you start to say, come on, it's entertainment, pal, all that stuff.
I don't think it ever got to that point. Okay. I don't think that it ever got to the point of Shawn saying, oh man, I don't want to do this or anything like that. It was kind of like, okay, let me think about it. And then I get it. Shawn's a smart guy.
Next up, Rob Van Dam and Shelton Benjamin. And this is a great match. 3.25 stars. They get plenty of time too. 18 minutes and 47 seconds. Rob Van Dam retains the Money in the Bank contract, but he captures the Intercontinental title in the process. Before the match, Lawler and Ross are asking about the status of Shelton's mama. And Ross said mama recently had surgery. And then of course, Lawler brought up Dr. Heine's skit with Mr. McMahon. And JR says, was that good television or what? And of course, the fans start chanting ECW for Rob Van Dam. Pretty good match here. There is a ref bump. Shelton tries to use the briefcase. Rob Van Dam tosses it to Shelton and then hits a Van Daminator, which pops the crowd because it's not a chair. It's the case. He goes up, hits the 5-star frog splash, and that's it. Wade would say strong athletic display for these two mid-card wrestlers, making a case for main event status. 3.25 stars. What'd you think watching this one back?
I thought it was excellent. It was excellent. And I enjoyed watching both Rob and Shelton go because they both could go. And it was nice to have not an overwhelming story, but a good story with two guys that could tell their story inside the ring. And it just showed, Rob shine and Shelton shined in this thing as well. So it was simple. But yeah, at the same time, it was damn exciting and one of those that people can leave, feeling really good about.
Rob would end up losing the Intercontinental title back to Shelton at the May 15th Raw. And then the next week, Rob would come out and tell Cena he's going to be chasing his world title when he cashes in his Money in the Bank contract at One Night Stand. Chat me up. If we're going to have him drop it in 2 weeks and then go for the world title, why do an IC switch here? Why not just have Shelton retain?
Well, then what good is that?
Well, I'm just wondering if is it we're trying to make you feel like you got your money's worth? You saw something happen. You saw a title switch.
Well, yeah. And also it keeps people guessing.
Okay.
And again, to the smart fan, they would analyze that. And, oh, well, they had to do this. Well, why can't shit just happen? Why can't, different people win on any given night?
In hindsight, we know Rob Van Dam is going to go on to be a big star. He's going to have a little trouble with the law that cuts this push short. But here he is having a series of really good matches with Shelton Benjamin. Is this as close as Shelton ever got to the quote unquote brass ring? Do you think?
I think Shelton's had a lot of brushes with it and is one of those talented guys that will always go down as one of the most talented guys to ever lace up a pair of boots.
After a video package airs recapping the Big Show Kane feud, Todd Grisham interviews Big Show, who was wearing bandages over his injured left eye. He said that unlike Kane, he didn't snap and start attacking people when he was in the Waterboy movie. He said he doesn't know why Kane is upset about May 19th, but it would be an eye for an eye against Kane. So here we are, Big Show and Kane, and they're going to go to a no contest in 10 minutes. Wade didn't like it. He gave it a dud. There's a lot of silliness here. Wade would say, the match dragged, and Ross said, this has not been a pretty match. Show tried to stab Kane in the eye, but Kane blocked and then kicked Show to the outside. Kane followed Show to the outside, and then the lights went down and Kane's inner voice came over the PA system. His voice repeated the May 19th date and warned him it would happen again. Ross said he couldn't explain where the voice was coming from, and Kane is inflicting pain on himself as Show was trying to console him. Show grabs a chair from the outside and then takes Kane out of his misery with a chair shot. Show walks out of the ring, and then Kane sat up and began to smile an evil smile. So without a decision, the match thankfully ended. What is this? I know we're trying to cross promote a movie, but we're asking people to buy this on pay-per-view. What the fuck?
It was a collision of the giants. This was a fucking big fuck.
This was bad.
Yeah, this was not good.
No.
That's what this was. This just wasn't good. And again, the whole story. I will say this though, man, with the May 19th stuff and the way that we got it, we had people buzzing about May 19th.
Right.
And at one point, I think we had the wrong date. And if you go back, and I could be wrong here, but I know internally we had the wrong date of the actual premiere versus when it was going to be in movie theaters and all this other stuff. So, but I think that this promotion was one of those just kind of crazy promotions that continually reminded people of the date of May 19th and had people going, what the hell is May 19th? What is May 19th? What's the significance? And then when you got to the significance, there was enough interest there to say, you know what, I might just go check this out. So to that, it was a success. But this match stunk.
So bad.
Not good.
Not bad.
There's nothing to defend there.
Next up, Candice Michelle walks into Vince McMahon's locker room and she's coughing and said she had a chest cold. And she asked Vince to play God and lay a healing hand on her. After Vince avoided Candice's chest, she reminded she reminds him it's a chest cold. So he says, heal this woman's voluptuous breasts. And he threw Candice down on the couch, and Candice had a near orgasm, then felt her own breasts. Shane grabbed Vince and told him their match was next. What the hell was that? Jim Ross asked. And then
a healing.
Then JR said, Vince has lost it. This skit backstage, my goodness. What can you tell us about this?
It was a miracle. Once again, having fun and being able to channel a little bit of inner brother love. And sometimes you must lay hands upon and touch for the healing forces to flow through the human body into another human body so that for the touch can heal upon them from within. I'm going to do an entire podcast on just like that.
Please don't.
I'm going to.
The next match is God versus Shawn Michaels.
God will face.
Yeah, he was teaming with Shawn Michaels. My apologies. He's taking on the McMahons. And, God and Vince have been going toe to toe since at least 84. So this is their first pay-per-view match. By now, you guys have already heard how we got here. Of course, this all started the day after Christmas, 2005. Where Vince is talking about Bret Hart's DVD, and he says something like, Shawn, don't make me screw you too. There's the interaction at Royal Rumble we've already covered. Of course, Saturday night's main event 32 we've already covered. You remember what happened at WrestleMania. We've already covered that. But the next night on Raw, the McMahons confront Shawn Michaels and inform him that his win at WrestleMania was an act of God. Therefore, it sets up the match here, where it's the McMahons versus Shawn and God. This is real, folks. It's an actual pay-per-view from 15 years ago. So let's talk about the match itself. I mean, I guess before we do, we should address the pre-match stuff. Prior to the match, Ross said he has a hard time understanding the theology of McMahonism. Vince introduces God, the lights dim, and a spotlight slowly walks to the ring. Vince stops the spotlight short and tells God to dance and make a real WWE entrance. The spotlight passed the ring, and Vince is dancing to some up-tempo gospel music. And the spotlight stood in Shawn's corner. Vince then tells the referee to go check God out because he could have an illegal object. And Vince changes his mind and tells God to bring whatever he has because the match is now no DQ, no holds barred. Shane is expressionless through all of this. And then Shawn Michaels' music interrupts, and here we go. What'd you think of this open? The spotlight.
It took a long time to rehearse that entrance.
Did God have it down
used to the ramp? And then getting in the ring and all was kind of, you got to wipe your feet and all that shit before you get in.
Is this your thinking? Let's put the spotlight in the corner and give the spotlight a ring entrance. And
well, how in the hell else are you going to know where he is?
I'm with you. I'm asking who came up with that idea.
Oh, I have no idea. I'm sure that was a Vince idea. Just kind of, he's got to have a spotlight. Give him a lighting treatment.
Are y'all all just tickled, cracking up when you see it?
I thought it was highly entertaining.
Vince says Shawn Michaels and God are going to go straight to hell by the end of the match. And Shawn lands a punch, and there we go. We're starting the match. What did you think of the match itself?
Well, I thought if it had been held in the Tokyo Dome, the match wasn't bad. The match was fun. I thought the match was good. It was a typical handicap match. And they did what they needed to do.
Vince eventually tags in, takes his belt off, and starts whipping Shawn Michaels. He smashes a trash can over his head and then grabs a mic. He's yelling in Shawn's corner, "Where the hell are you going, God?" And then he announced, "God has left the building." Lots of fun stuff here. There's table spots, there's ladders, there's big elbows. The Spirit Squad's here. The Spirit Squad eventually attacks Shawn and lay him out, and then they resuscitate the McMahons. The Squad takes Shawn into the ring, slam him through one of the tables. The Squad placed Vince on top of Shawn, and there's your win. And Lawler said, "The Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit Squad."
Oh man.
3 stars.
Look, I know where I'm going, Conrad. So I was like,
Meltzer would say, I keep saying it. Wade would say, "Good spectacle match with good heat for Shawn's comebacks. The finish didn't feel like the type of finish to conclude a feud." Yeah, no kidding. Can you believe that God lost?
He left. He walked out.
So you think the story here is God turned his back on Shawn Michaels?
Well, okay, hang on. See, and I'm going to give you an analogy here. Oh. And this is when I was a kid, and I know I've told you this story. I don't know if I ever told our listeners this story about the time that I had to go to Paul Bosch's testimonial at his church in Sugar Land, Texas. Very beautiful place. And I'm in the stands and I'm listening, and one of the main speakers gets up and he talks and he tells a story about going hunting. Him and 4 of his friends, they were on a hunting trip somewhere in the mountains. And as they were on this hunting trip, they came across a sheep on the side of the road. And this sheep had broken its ankle and had been left on the side of the road to die because the rest of the flock couldn't help the sheep with the broken ankle and had left this sheep on the side of the road to die. And this Speaker went on to say, he goes, Lord Jesus Christ, he will not leave you on the side of the road to die. No, he will not. If you're a part of his flock, they will pick you up and they will bring you with, regardless of your condition. So the next day, Paul Bosch comes in and into the office, and he asked me, he says, so what did you think of the presentation last night? I said, well, it was interesting. Does he have any questions? I said, I do have one. I said, what's that? I said, well, you remember that story that the main speaker was talking about, going deer hunting and everything up in the mountains and coming across a sheep? And yeah. He's really interested. And I said, well, that's cool, God won't leave you on the side of the road. I said, but who was looking after the deer that those guys were pointing the rifles at and killing? And Paul just got up with the utmost disgust, grabbed his briefcase, and walked out of the office. And I don't think we spoke for about 3 days after that. So what I'm saying is... You're a heathen. I'm a heathen.
Yeah, I got that.
Okay.
Cliff notes. I knew that the first time we hung out.
Yeah.
In hindsight...
I believe, but, it's just, we all have our different beliefs. And ways of believing.
In hindsight. Should you have done this?
I found, again, man, I think that when you view it through glasses of many years later, maybe not, but in the time, when you're living it in the time, it was, again, parody and entertainment that I found very entertaining. I wouldn't do it today. No.
Next up, John Cena's backstage with Todd Grisham. They're discussing the split audience, and Cena said one constant would be Lillian Garcia, who would announce John Cena is still the WWE champion. And Matt Striker came to the ring for the buffer match before the main event. He runs down Kentucky and then brings out Eugene. He said Eugene might be the smartest person from the state of Kentucky, but even he can't spell his own name. And Eugene added likes poop to Matt Striker's name on the chalkboard, and Striker became upset, and he became fixated on the snot that Eugene picked from his nose. Eugene stuffed it down Striker's mouth and then hit the stunner. Eugene took off and Striker gave chase. This is your let me up segment, right?
That's an 18-star just segment right there.
Next up, it's a 3-way dance for the world title. Triple H won the Road to WrestleMania #1 contender tournament, so he earned a shot against John Cena at WrestleMania. Of course, Cena won, making him tap out. The next night, Triple H demands another shot, but Edge interrupts him, and he says, hey, I became the WWE champ at New Year's Revolution. I deserve a shot. And here we are. We've got a 3-way dance set up. So they get 17 minutes and 10 seconds, and when Wade would say no crazy ring entrances like WrestleMania, Edge ducks out after the opening bell and tells Hunter and Cena to start the match. I've always liked that. If it's a 3-way, why not just remove yourself from the situation and let these guys beat the shit out of each other and get tired, and I'll pick my spots. Edge positioning himself as the ultimate opportunist. That made sense, right?
Actually, absolutely. And the spot was stolen from, if you go back to the, probably best Royal Rumble, the 92 Royal Rumble. Always loved when Jake made his entrance, and Piper and it may have been Piper and Flair were going at it, and Jake just slid in and went to the corner and watched him. Like, why get involved?
Yeah.
That's smart. Yeah. Okay. You two guys are going at it. I'll be over here. let me know when there's an opening. I'll jump in and do whatever it is I need to do.
Eventually Cena's going to get involved here with Lita, and there's a 5-knuckle shuffle that he's going for. And when Lita pulls the top rope down, Cena falls to the outside and fans cheer it. So this is definitely the era where fans are starting to turn against John Cena. Was there any concern about that, hey, we're positioning him as our babyface, our great white hope, our All-American, our next Hulk Hogan, but the fans just don't seem to be with it?
I think that there was, yes. I mean, there was concern amongst a lot of people thinking that, you had to protect John in the traditional babyface way, but John wasn't a traditional babyface, and the audience cared so damn much about John one way or the other. Those that loved him. Those that didn't, they were boisterous. So as long as they were reacting, like, well, you know what? They care.
The match gets really, really bloody here. When you watch this back, I mean, me and you have talked off air before. You don't really dig all the blood. Can you enjoy it here in 06, or when you watch blood in wrestling, does it usually need to be like the 70s or 80s for you to be with it?
No. And again, I think that in the moment, sometimes, the old school way of thinking was, this is good for the story. This is good for business. This is believability. And you get wrapped up in it. And I think that blood elicits emotion. So you can relate to bleeding. You can relate to that pain. So it's an effective tool. I just, in my older age, man, I just kind of got to the point where you don't really need that to sell the same emotion and to be able to sell and tell the same story. And it may just be me, but that's as you get older, your tastes change.
Yeah, they do. Let's talk about the finish here. Hunter tosses the chair aside, then retrieves the sledgehammer. Edge catches him out of nowhere with a spear, and then Edge goes after Hunter with the sledgehammer, but Hunter avoids it. Cena goes for the FU on Edge, but Hunter low blows Cena and Edge falls to the outside. Hunter then goes for the pedigree, but Cena drops Hunter onto his back and then goes for a bridge pin for the win, and the place explodes. Wade would say it was a good and brutal spot fest. They handled the three-way situation as believably as possible, and it was main event worthy. He gave it 4 stars. I think this is so fascinating where fans are booing John Cena when he comes in. They're booing or they're cheering when John Cena gets screwed by Lita midway through the match on a random spot. But when he gets the pin, they've told such a great story, they explode. So even if their guy didn't win, that's not what it's about. We just saw something fucking awesome and they explode.
Yes. And I think it surprised them too. So they were happy to be surprised and like, damn, that was good. And that explosion was for something that they may not have expected, but they were happy because he earned it. He being John Cena earned it throughout that match. And all 3 of those guys left everything they had in that ring. And the audience appreciates that, and they look at it and go, yes, this is what we wanted. And I think that that's a lot of where that explosion came from.
Overall, what'd you think about this show, watching it back for the first time in 15 years? Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle?
I thought it was a thumbs up. And, mainly from the Vince and Shawn and Shane handicap match and the last match. I thought the last match was absolutely spectacular.
I want to mention too, after the match, Hunter attacks John Cena from behind. He's going to grab the sledgehammer and then lay out the referee. He drops Edge and Cena with sledgehammer shots to the face. He does a DX crotch chop over Cena's fallen body, and Hunter's music plays. And then he gets to the top of the ramp and does another crotch chop. So Cena and Edge are motionless on the mat as Hunter is playing to the crowd. So even though Hunter has been positioned as a heel, we're definitely flirting with him being a babyface. Not necessarily that the crotch chop thing is that, but with the teases from Shawn Michaels on Suck It and all that, we're headed towards a DX reunion of sorts. And that is not debatable in this era, right?
Right.
When, we've sort of hinted at, even at WrestleMania, when they're doing the crotch chops here and there, a month later, it's apparent. When did you know, hey man, we're going to do a reunion?
For a while, and it was a battle to get there. I don't think that Shawn and Hunter really wanted to go back there because it wasn't the full DX.
Right.
So it was a little bit of a battle to get them there, but eventually we got them there.
Well, June 25th, 2006 will be the next Raw only pay-per-view. It's in Charlotte, North Carolina. And on top, it's DX taking on the Spirit Squad. So We're all the way back. I'm sure we're going to talk about that in the future, but that's going to do it for this week's episode of Something to Wrestle. We greatly appreciate you guys jumping in with us and talking about the silliness of God in a wrestling match. Next week though, Bruce, because we got a little bit behind, I've got a few different topics in mind. I'm going to let you pick.
Again?
Yeah.
You know how dangerous that can be.
So instead of there being a poll for fans, there's a poll for Bruce.
Oh,
I'm
boy.
going to give you 3 names and you pick. You ready?
Dude, I have a hard time choosing lunch.
Hercules, Trish Stratus, Dr. Death, Steve Williams. What do you want to do next week?
Let's go, Doc.
Dr. Death it is, coming your way next week on May 14th. Of course, you get all these shows early and ad-free over at adfreeshows.com. And Bruce, I had a lot of fun with this episode. I don't know what I expected talking about God on pay-per-view, but hey, we got it done, man. Thanks for making the time.
We're on a mission from God.
What is that a line from?
Blues Brothers.
Oh.
You don't know the Blues Brothers?
Saw it one time.
Oh my God. You need to go back and see it 8 more times. We're on a mission from God.
I think next time you and I are in California or Colorado, we'll have a couple of beverages and eat some candy and watch it. How's that?
That works for me.
Yeah.
Why do we got to wait to be in California or Colorado?
Reasons.
Oh, you know people.
No, I don't. I don't know anything. I know
that
nothing.
Is so untrue.
Yeah. Well, here's what I do know. It's the end of the show. We appreciate you guys' support. Thank you very much for all that you do for us. If you've got a question about Dr. Death, go ask it right now at Prichard Show on Twitter. He is at Bruce Prichard. I am at Hey, it's Conrad, and we are out of time. We'll see you next week right here on Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard.
I love our audience. They are the greatest audience in the entire world.
Oh, hey, I forgot to tell you too. You know, we got a little heat because we had to cut Kevin Nash short back in the day.
Yeah.
Not that he's short. You know what I mean? Well, in 2 weeks on the 21st, we're finally getting around to Kevin Nash part 2.
All right.
That'll be pretty cool.
Yeah, it will. I still love our audience.
Yeah, I love our audience too. We're allowed to love our audience.
Don't get hot.
Hey, so when are you going to listen?
They put up with my shit, and sometimes it's just unavoidable shit.
Are you gonna listen to Jeff Jarrett's My World podcast when we hang up?
Yeah, probably not.
Come on, man. It's at My World Podcast on Twitter. It's easy to find. Anywhere you enjoy podcasts, just type in My World with Jeff Jarrett.
Do you know how many functions I use on my phone now?
Not a lot.
Yeah.
I mean,
and you told me to get rid of some apps.
Buddy, let's just talk about that for a minute. Deleting Twitter off your phone has made your life a little happier. Can we agree?
It's still on here though.
Well, don't go there.
I don't.
Okay, good.
I'm just saying it's still up on right there. It's on there.
Well, click it and go to at My World Podcast and see what you think of Jeff's show. I think you'll dig it.
I'm not gonna do that.
Well, let me tease you. The first episode that we just dropped, it's about quote unquote holding up Vince. And I don't think Jim Ross is going to be very happy with all the content of the show. And you like to make fun of Jim on the show, so I think you'd like that.
Sure. Not the way I remember it, Connie.
You know, I got to get you fired up and him fired up and get a little liquor going in y'all and just click record.
Yeah, well, first thing we got to find is that TIME.
Well, you want to sing us out? I'm still recording, by the way.
Oh, what the fuck?
What do you mean?
I don't. I said goodbye, and then now you want me to spend my days working hard on the go, but the hands on the clock keep spinning too slow. 'Cause I can't wait to be alone with my baby tonight. You know my baby's got me wrapped around her little finger, and you know that I will walk through hell and back to be with her. 'Cause I can't wait to be alone with my baby tonight. Hey, hey. Ho, ho. That's all I got.
All right, we're done. See you later. See you next week, folks.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.